Hello everyone, video will cover the introduction to the project you'll be working on this semester during your weeks when you're not meeting in person, and also a discussion of today's assignment, the first week off assignment. So the major goals of this project we're going to do, I'm calling it the lab portfolio because you're going to turn in everything at the end of the semester as a PDF. You're going to learn to identify local flora and fauna. You're going to work in teams to collect and analyze diversity data, and then you'll present your findings in your final write-up. The assignment will be completed in groups of 2 to 4 students. All students in the group must participate. If a group member does not participate or does not participate equally, they will not receive full points for the assignment. This portfolio is going to consist of 3 parts. The first part, and you can complete them all at the same time. You'll have to decide how you want to spread your workload out, but everyone should participate. So the Jewelmore Nature Reserve scavenger hunt, which is towards the back of your manual, page 106, your group needs to find at least 30 items from that list and photograph them during the course of the semester. And I ask that whenever possible, unless there's like an animal that you can't, you see an animal and you want to get a picture and it won't hold still, you should have either your manual or like a quarter coin of some kind in frame for the picture, so I can tell that you actually took it, that you didn't find it online somewhere. Okay? Points will not be awarded for wasps and bees and scorpions or snakes, so don't handle those kinds of critters, and do not handle vertebrates while completing the assignment. We can't handle turtles or frogs or anything, or fish. Okay? Photographs need to be clear, in focus, and close enough to the organism to make identification possible. Please include a label on each photograph identifying the specimen and when the photograph was taken. So to do that, I would go ahead and just put these pictures into an Excel file. And I'm sorry, not an Excel file, a PowerPoint file. And then draw arrows if you need to, or whatever, and title the slide what is in the slide. In fact, probably this entire project can be built in a PowerPoint file and then saved as a PDF at the end of the semester. The second project you're going to do is you have to decide in your group if you want to follow plant or animal diversity, so probably insect diversity, in the Jewelmore Nature Reserve in the prairie. So what you'll do is you'll go to the prairie, and if you're studying animal diversity, you're going to mark out a 1 meter by 1 meter square, so a square meter square, which we call a quadrat in ecology. So you'll hear me use the word plot or quadrat to describe it a lot of times. So this quadrat will be 1 meter by 1 meter square. And if you're doing plants, you're going to do a 50 centimeter by 50 centimeter quadrat, okay? A little bit smaller. So all of these plots should be, I'm going to say, at least 10 meters from the trail. So you're not right on the trail. You're out in the prairie a little ways. What you'll do is you'll document qualitative and quantitative changes in those plots over the course of the semester. So you'll have to visit them at least 3 times. If you're doing plants, you don't have to know what all the species are, but you can give them names like species 1, 2, and 3. Photograph them, write down their characteristics so you can remember which one's which when you come back to that plot later. For insects, you should try to key them out to order. And if you can't figure out the order of an insect, then you could call that particular insect, order B, order C, order D, whatever. But try to key them out to order, get their photographs, and clearly put those into your PowerPoint that you'll be saving as a PDF at the end of the semester. So you should visit the plot at least 3 times. Make notes over what you see. If you see any pollinators, if you see any, make qualitative observations of the stuff that you see within that plot or within the nature reserve itself on your way to the plot. And then you're going to quantify the diversity and how it changes during the semester. And at the end of the semester, you need to pick up your flags that mark your plot, and that'll be your final. The final way you get your score for this section is by returning the flags to lab so that I know they're not still out there. Okay, and the last part, number 3, you're going to work in your same groups, and you're going to use the key in the back of the manual to identify 10 species of trees in the Jewelmore Nature Reserve, and you're going to get a photograph with them clear enough that I can tell if you identified them correctly or not. Okay, so all of that will be put together in one big document and sent. Be sure before you do number 2 that you have a hypothesis as well, how you think diversity will change over time. That's very important since we're doing science, right? So there's a little bit more information here. There's some videos that you can watch if you want to help get you started. But what I'm going to do today is talk to you about how we're going to quantify diversity in these plots. Okay, so you're going to have a square meter or a kind of a half meter square, and you're going to identify either the insects you catch in a net in that section, in that plot, or you're going to identify the plants in that plot, and you need to figure out how diverse the plot is. So let me show you how we do that. We do that with something called the Shannon Diveristy Index. And you can find the Shannon Diveristy Index described on page 884 of your textbook. That's back in chapter 41. In fact, here's figure 41.12, which is from your book, asking which of these two forests is most diverse. So pretend this is your quadrat, your plot. And, you know, we're not going to sample trees in the prairie. We'll have grasses and things like that. But still, you can see there's two different plots here. Plot 1. Each species has 5 members in this community, okay? So let me show you how we calculate diversity using the Shannon Diveristy Index, sometimes called the Shannon-Weiner Index, but your book calls it just the Shannon Diveristy Index, so that's what I'll call it too. Okay. So species A, B, C, and D, notice we didn't even name them, right? It doesn't matter. Each one, we put how many there were, lowercase n. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 different species, and there's 5. So there's 4 species, and there's 5 members of each of those species. And then we put the total number of individuals of all species, which is capital N, and that's 20. 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, okay? All right. Now, the next thing we do is we figure out the proportion of each of these individuals. We do that by taking n over big N, little n over big N, so 5 over 20. And so for each of these species, they make up 25% of the individuals in that plot. All right, then we take the natural logarithm of that proportion. So that's a button on your calculator, or you can do it in Excel. The symbol in Excel is equals and then ln. Okay, and that's how you could do this in Excel. And you take the natural logarithm of each of these, and you get negative 1.39 for each and every one of those because they had the same proportion. Okay, next step, next column, you're going to take the proportion of the individuals times the natural logarithm of the proportions of those individuals. So to make that easier, basically you take this column times this column. 0.25 times negative 1.39. So for each of these, you get negative 0.347. Then for the last column, you simply multiply each of those by negative 1 and add them together. And so your diversity index is 1.39. Okay? That's for this population here, 1.39. If we go up to the next group here, the next population, there are 16 members of individual A. There's 1 member of B, 1 member of C, and 2 members of D. So there's still 20 community members here, but they're in different proportions. So we get the proportion. So we take 16 over 20, 1 over 20, 2 over 20, etc. And we get these proportions, slightly different than what we saw before. We take the natural logarithm of each of those, and we get these values here. When we take the natural logarithm of them, then we multiply the proportion by the natural logarithm, and we get these values here. We multiply them by negative 1, we add them together, and we get 0.709, or you could even round that to 0.71. And so we can compare then 0.079 is less than 1.39. Therefore, community 1 is more diverse than community 2 because that value is larger. Okay? So what you're going to do then is you're going to do the math on these two hypothetical communities. I don't have a picture of them, but I tell you how many So we have species A through E, and I tell you how many there are in each of these two communities. And you are going to figure out which one is more diverse and write a 1 or 2 sentence conclusion about which one is more diverse and how you can tell. And that is your assignment for this week. When we come back and meet in person for the first time, if you haven't already done so, you can meet your group members and decide whether you're going to study animals or plants and get each other's contact information and get started on this project.